The blue abyss of the sky above was chilly with the promise of spring, as fresh as the ever-moving sea, and adorned with lively clouds tossed by the ever-present breeze. On this clear day, a girl overlooks the vast ocean that encircled her, reaching all the way to the hazy horizon in three directions: east, west, and south. To the east, she could see a thin blue line, and in the west there is a blue island. She thinks that the island is big and very rich in nature, which her father had told her, that the island was another location called the mainland of Mindanao. Her name is Mindaza, a 19-year-old girl who knows nothing about life from the other island. While she was sitting on a big fishing boat, she promised to herself that one day she would visit that big island, to find treasures and other useful things that was in there. Someday, she reminded herself. Today was a regular day for fishing, minding catching something from the depths of the water, and searching for treasures in the coast brought by the sea. She gazed around again, noticing the rough grassland and heather patches studded with the lichen-stained rocks that littered Salaya, her native island. Mindaza climbed a grassy hill, her eyes wandering eastward as they had so often before. The small island near the area in which there is a forbidden cave. Her parents forbade her from even venturing close to it, and she had gone there many times. Her father had always caught her before she reached the door of the forbidden cave. She promised herself, someday, I'll explore what's inside the cave and discover why it's forbidden. Mindaza rushed over the beachfront, lifting her skirt. There was always some treasure to be found, whether it was a weirdly shaped shell, a stretch of driftwood that was invaluable on this practically treeless island, or even an unusual fruit with a thick skin. She raced quickly as usual, relishing the feeling of the wind in her hair and the shifting crunch of the shingle beneath her bare feet as she approached the shore. A refreshing rain shower kissed her face, seabirds swooped and screeched above, and the long sea breakers exploded in a rhythmic frenzy around her. Mindaza came to a halt and frowned. To her surprise, she found a mound that was standing on the shore. She just saw it now, even though it was high tide. It wasn't a seal or any other stray animal, it was long and dark. Is someone made it there? She whispered to herself. Mindaza hesitated for a split second, knowing that whatever it was, would change her life. She slowly stepped forward and lifted a stone to use as her weapon, as she approached the mound. Then she noticed that the mound has a big hole at the back. One person can enter through the entrance of it, but she cannot see what is inside of it, because it is so dark in the deep part. Then she tried to call. Hello. Mindaza heard the nervousness in her voice. Hello. She tried again. Her voices were blown away by a gust of wind. Mindaza took one step forward, and the mound suddenly grown to the size of a fully grown man. She looked at how long it was based on her height, then she looked down, and she discovered something in that mound. She knelt down to check it, and tugged one of the trailing strands of seaweed away from it. She saw that there was more beneath within. Mindaza continued to uncoil the seaweed, revealing what lay beneath. Wait a minute, I need some fire. Mindaza left the shore to get some dried leaves of coconut, then she returned to the shore where the mound is. She tied up the leaves and make a fire. Now she can see for what's inside of the hole. At first, she thinks the mound will give her treasures, and if not, she's hopeful that there is something useful things in there. A man, Mindaza said, as she stepped back. She is still holding the coconut leaves with fire. Then she made a second look to ascertain if it is really a man. With the help of the light from the burning fire of coconut leaves, to her surprise she saw that there is actually a body of a man. Then she came cautiously closer and said, Hey, how are you there? Are you okay? But the man did not answer. Are you still alive? Again, there was no response. Mindaza shook her head and forced herself to go down. How did you reach this place? Don't tell me you crawled from the sea. Mindaza said. She looked at the surroundings. It seems that the man was still alive when he arrived. She checked his feet and hands as a result of a sudden thought. So you're not a merman? She asked the silent body. She scanned him with her gaze. You're well made. What are you? Mindaza felt scared as she observed him, until she found out that the man had an unhealed wound that ran across the side of his ribs. My father will know what to do with you. Just wait here, she says. Lifting her skirt above her knees, Mindaza ran back home across the hills, then stopped for a moment, glancing over her shoulder to ensure that her discovery had not risen and run away. She ran through the open backyard of their house. Her parents were busy arranging the dried squid and fish on the long table made of bamboo. Mother. Father. There's a man on the beach. He might be dead, but I think he is still alive. Please come and check him. Her eyes widened, saying those words to her parents. Her parents looked up from the table they had been preparing. Her father's name is Leto and her mother's name is Salaya. What? Her mother said in shock. Take me with you, her father said. A couple of small crabs scuttled sideways as Mindaza's father approached the body. She looked down and pursed her lips at his scar. Father, we can take him to the house, she said. He's all naked, Mindaza pointed out. Her father gave a small smile. So that's why you have to wear your clothes, he reminded her daughter. The sight of a naked man will not hurt you. Now, take one of his arms. He's heavy, Mindaza said. We'll manage, her father said. Now, lift. Mindaza glanced down at the man as they lifted him, felt the color rush to her face and quickly looked away. The man's trailing feet left a drag mark in the sand and rattled the shingle as they hauled him home. While the father and daughter worked together to bring the man to their house, Salaya saw it from the bank. They were walking carrying the stranger to their home. Who do you think he is, father? She asked, when at last they lurched across the cottage threshold. He is a man, her father said, and I think he is a warrior. Mindaza glanced down at his body. He is well muscled, but not muscle bound like a stone mason or a farmer. He is lean and smooth and supple. When she looked again, Mindaza thought she saw a gleam of interest in her eyes. That scar is too straight to be an accident. That is a sword slash, sure as death. How do you know that, father? Have you seen a sword slash before? Mindaza helped her father place the warrior onto his arms to support him in bed. He lay there, face up, unconscious, salt-stained and with sand embedded in various parts of his body. Mindaza, her mother called out. Yes, mother. Mindaza did not leave the room. Get yourself out of the room first, your father and I will going check him, her mother said. But I want to watch and see who he is. Mindaza insisted abruptly as her mother swung a well-practiced hand. Ah, yeah, all right, I'm going, mother, I'm going. Before the castaway woke up, 2 days had passed. The majority of the island's residents simply happened to be passing and casually inquired about the nude man Mindaza had discovered over the 2 days during which she checked on him hourly. Mindaza's home was the topic of conversation in Salaya for those 2 days. After the guy awoke, Mindaza's home took on a prominent role in the neighborhood. Granny Wana sat on the 3-legged stool next to the fire and said to Mindaza, we haven't seen anything like this since the old days. Not since your mother was a young adult, not much older than you are at the moment. What happened then? Mindaza folded her skirt and balanced on the edge of the wooden bench that was already occupied by 2 men. Mother never tells me anything about the old days. Best wait and ask her then. Granny Wana nodded her head, so her gray hair bounced. It's not my place to tell you anything that your mother doesn't want to share. She lowered her voice. I heard you found him first. Yes, Granny Wana, Mindaza agreed in a hushed whisper. Granny Wana appointed a quick glance to the outside, her mother is on her way. Her wink emphasized the furrows that Mindaza felt resembled the tree ring patterns of a recently felled tree. How did you see it? Who is that man? Mindaza was pursued by her cackling as she hurried to the adjacent room of the home, where a group of people were gathering around the stranger and speculating about his lineage. Pedro waggled his gray beard, definitely a warrior. He prodded the man's tummy with a short finger, saying, look at the muscles on him, all toned to perfection. I was looking at them, Mala, his wife said with a smile and a sidelong look at Alto, her friend. They exchanged glances and laughed together at some secret memory. Maybe 26 years ago, Alto said while still laughing. More like 30, Mala remarked, to everyone's amusement. The groan was initially detected by Mindaza. She added, listen, but grown-ups who are conversing do not pay attention to what a 18-year-old girl has to say. The man groaned once again. Listen. Mindaza spoke his words with more volume. He is awakening. She grabbed her mother's arm and pulled. Mother. The castaway groaned again and jerked upright in the bed. He looked around at the assembled, staring people. Where am I? The stranger man asked. Where is this place? His voice was hoarse. Mindaza's mother applauded as each adult began to mumble a response. Her father stood aside and let her mother decide what to do. Silence. She ordered. I will be the one to speak. This is my home. She added. Even the stranger has been silenced with many questions to himself. He gave a straight glance to a woman who was standing behind him, asking himself, is she the queen here? No, I am not a queen. I am only the woman of the house. Mindaza's mother knelt beside the bed. This is my daughter. She found you on the beach 2 days past. We do not know who you are or how you came to be here. He looked at the girl standing next to the woman. Mindaza smiled at him, then bowed her head. I am Kalal. The man swallowed from the beaker Mindaza held to his lips. Pushing her away, Kalal tried to rise, winced, and bobbed his head in greeting. Well met, woman of the house. Please bring me the head of this place. There is no head on this place. We do not need such leadership. We live here quietly and equally. Mindaza's mother told him direct to the point. What is your name, domestic woman? Kalal said as he rose from his seat. In the midst of the chaos, his pale black eyes darted from person to person. I am Mindaza, she stated. Kalal realized after hearing her name that it was not a name for a lady or a farmer. Kalal slid out of bed, trembling, and clutching the wall for support. Salaya gently reprimanded him, adding, it is the name she has, and you bring shame to my house by standing naked in front of my guests. Mindaza knew at that time that she was not the only woman in the room staring at Kalal's figure. She felt a flush on her face as she turned her head away. The man named Kalal stood up straight and faced her, paying no attention to any instructions. That name is familiar to me. I recognize it, Kalal replied, breathing deeply. Are you a member of the famous family? Which came first, the warrior or the high-ranking officials? Kalal's voice could now be plainly heard. I don't think so if I am that girl you've known, Mindaza stated after Kalal gave her a cursory glance. You're not what I expected, Kalal continued in a cryptic response. He pulled himself away from the wall and said, then it is you I have come to see. There is something you should have to know. The mood abruptly changed from attention and mild enjoyment to anxiety and, in Mindaza's opinion, is terror. Salaya seemed to realize that Mindaza was scrutinizing the man's nakedness with undisguised curiosity and said, leave out of here, Mindaza. You are still too young. But I am 19 years old. Mindaza insisted. Oh, just let the girl see, Granny Wana said with a chuckle. It won't hurt her to see what a male looks like, so say the experts. Kalal remarked, it is not about what she sees, it is about what she could hear. Mindaza followed Granny Wana's cackling into the other room. Leto, come over, let's talk, all of you, let's talk about this. Salaya urged everyone to follow her. They all go to the outside of the house. In the backyard there is a cottage where they can have their short meetings. As adults talked, Mindaza positioned herself as near the door as she could. Starring on the group of people talking in the cottage. She heard voices murmured. Later on, there was a brief silence, then her mother's stern voice. Mindaza, pack your belongings, we're going to leave right away. But Salaya, she's still young. Leto urgently responded. Hearing those words surprised him at the sudden decision. She will be fine. Leto, trust me. We will be right back here to live the way we have here, the sooner the better. It happened so quickly. Mindaza was settled in the house she had known her entire life. But this moment, she and her mother had decided to move from this place. Leto seems to have no choice but to agree with Salaya. Where are we headed? Mindaza asked in confusion. Khalil opened the door and stroked Mindaza's shoulder, saying, "Just don't ask. You will see what lies beyond your future." Salaya walked away from the cottage and said, "You've always wanted to travel since you were kid, you always wanted to see what lies beyond the confines of our small island. Well, sweetie, now you are going to do just that," Salaya said. Her smile lacked humor as her hazel eyes seemed to drive into Mindaza's soul. Does she mean I am going to have a little adventure? Mindaza asked herself. But deep inside she was excited about it. Granny Wana pointed out the window and said, Mindaza heard the stern shout, "Your friend is back." After what Mindaza heard, she noticed there is a huge bird flying in the sky. It's an eagle land on the gnarled, stunted on avocado tree outside of their home. The bird sat still, rotating its head until it was staring directly through the cottage window. Mindaza, open the window, Khalil requested, even though he spoke softly. The legendary eagle entered, sat on top of the bed, glanced about the space, and then leapt onto Khalil's extended arm. Matang Laan, welcome back, Khalil said as she stroked the bird's throat. Mindaza shook her head and made a glance at her mother. Khalil had left the room, taking the eagle with him, and Mindaza followed him. This bird is my favorite animal, having piercing eyes, large wings that can soar to the top of the sky, and claws that are like the point of a sword. So, despite being far above, he has a good vantage point over the ground below. Khalil said, her voice hushed as she spoke. So his name is Matang Laan, or the Hawkeye. Khalil added to say, Hawkeye is the root word given by your name, Mindaza, and this bird is yours. Keep an eye out for that bird and take his cues. This bird will lead you in the right direction. Khalil explained it well. Mindaza felt amazed hearing those meaningful connection. After Salaya and Mindaza finish packing their things, Salaya tells something first to Leto, and Mindaza bid her goodbye to her father. Khalil, on the other hand, had discovered clothing, so he stood in the far end of the house wearing a linen, the ubiquitous shirt that everyone, male and female, wore. Khalil's shirt strained to cover his chest, and his loose tartan pants barely reached his knees. We need a boat, Khalil said. We don't have a boat, Mindaza replied, until Granny Wana put a hand on her shoulder. There are many things you don't yet know, Granny Wana said quietly. Mindaza shook her head as she did not understand what Granny meant. Where are we going? Mindaza asked again. Are we going to mainland Mindanao? We're going to see the king, Khalil told her. The king? Do you mean the lord of that big island? No. Khalil's tones have cracked like a granite. Not the lord of the island. We are going to see the king himself. Granny Wana watched Mindaza go. She said, the time of your journey has come. I wish you a great flight like an eagle, Mindaza. Her eyes were opaque. Khalil moved in a straight path eastward together with Salaya, over the arising moorland toward the mid-morning light as Eagle shrieked harsh welcomes as she left the cottage where Mindaza had lived her entire life. Mindaza went after them, unsure. On their walks, Khalil looked to her right, where the huge eagle was flying above circling. A westerly breeze rustled across the soggy heather. We are moving near the forbidden cave, mother. Mindaza said as she noticed the nearby area. With each step, a gully that had formed from a dip in the moor became deeper until they were descending through a little cut that had rocky walls on both sides. Up ahead, a 10-foot-high, slippery and dark tunnel loomed. Mindaza had received several warnings throughout her childhood not to visit this area, but her mother just walked right in without turning to the left or right. Mindaza hesitated, having previously been compelled to investigate the forbidden cave. She inhaled deeply before moving forward. Inside the cave, Mindaza was surrounded by a salty-smelling, crisp, fresh veil of darkness. She looked forward and listened to Kalal's hefty step and her mother's assured patting of her feet. By the sound of their footsteps alone, she could recognize each one. Even in the dark, Kalal appeared to be aware of her whereabouts, saying, "Here we are." Salaya pulled out 3 rush torches as she came to a stop next to a wall niche. She ignited the rushes by striking 2 pieces of flint together to create a spark. Around them, yellow light accumulated. She gave Kalal one and said, "Hold that, we can start here walking on that far." Mindaza realized they were moving over a rocky ledge with water bubbling beneath them when she heard the surge of water and saw the light of the torch being reflected from their left. The sound of the surf amplified till it reverberated within the cave. "Where are we now?" she asked. "This cave spans from a hillside to a sea outlet at the western cliffs," Kalal said, rolling back what Mindaza had assumed to the wall of the cave. "Now, stand still and don't get in the way." Mindaza didn't move because she was shocked, as if there was magic, but in reality it is just a leather screen. There had been an occasional visit from storm-tossed fishing boats to the mainland, but the vessel that Kalal revealed behind the screen was different from anything Mindaza had seen before. Both the stem and stern rose sharply, while the hull was narrow and made of shaped wooden planks, overlapping in clinker fashion. There were holes for 6 oars on each side and space amidships to fit a mast. At the bow, rising in an open-mouthed scream, a carved eagle's head glared forward. "Mindaza, what do you think?" Kalal took a step back. "It's enormous." Mindaza's amazement was obvious. Then she asked, "Where did it come from?" "We put it here before you were born," Kalal explained. "The day before I was born." Mindaza asked herself again, wondering what other matters that her mothers hide from her. "I wanted to raise you in this island. I named this under my name as a remembrance that I give birth for my precious daughter. Until the moment you had to leave the Salaya island. To meet the king." "Salaya," her mother told her, while Kalal slapped the boat's hull. "It seems that you enjoy living here." Insert of Kalal. "Yes, of course," Mindaza responded. "Will the king truly meet with us?" Salaya, the mother of Mindaza, asked Kalal. That is precisely what she must be aware of. Her eyes were level and serene as she glanced at Mindaza. "Yes, we are going to meet the king." "Why?" Mindaza asked, as she heard his confirmation. She was in deep thought now, about why is the king wanted to meet them. Kalal told them in gentle voices, "We'll see what happens after that." Mindaza shrugged for what information Kalal provided. Kalal notices her silences. So he added to say, "If the king desires you to know, he will. Or if our situation changes, you will be notified." "We might be better going to meet the king," Salaya suggested. As the 3 prepared to leave, Mindaza has surprisingly seen many gleams of light reflecting on the sea, a sign that they were not alone. When she looked back, it appeared the majority of people living in Salaya's island had followed them into the forbidden cave. Torchlight accentuated the men and women she had known her entire life's cheekbones and dark eye sockets, weather-tanned foreheads and resolute chins. Some carried packages and barrels, which they deposited on the rocky ledge next to the boat. There were log rollers stacked between the boat and the wall of the cave, but even with them, Wave Skimmer was heavier than Mindaza had expected. It took them an hour to maneuver the boat onto the water. There is something surged within Mindaza that she wanted to board that boat and sail. She did not know where exactly. She only knew that something deep within, someone is calling her. Kalal connected a rope to her stern post, and fastened it to a stone bollard on the shelf, all the while sporting a gray beard and a pink scalp that gleamed through his graying hair. The wooden maid, Wave Skimmer, has the figurehead and perched on top of a real eagle sculpted. Salaya stepped and sat in the bow. "Are we all present?" Her voices could be heard all the way back in the cave. Everyone looks at each other and someone says, "Yes, we are all present. Before we start the journey, just remember who we are." This time, Salaya yelled, and the response came in a resounding roar that left Mindaza wondering about these people, whom she had known her entire life, could create such a racket. She took in her surroundings, taking in her friends and neighbors, the farmers, the gruff potters, the peat cutters, ditch digger and the fisherman. She recognized them all, yet they were all strangers in this place. Yes, the spiral hunter are the legends that never die. All men and women shouted those words that echoed around the cave again. Then, let them know that the spiral hunter is coming. Celaya yelled, and the islanders gave a treble cheer that made Mindaza's hair stand on end. Despite having no understanding what or why she was cheering, she joined the crowd by pumping her fist in the air and stomping her feet on the deck. Only the surge and sucking of the waves and the slightly labored breathing of the islanders remained as the cacophony diminished to a whisper and went away. The spiral hunter. Mindaza repeated to say the words. That means the people of Celaya are the spiral hunters, not just normal people, Celaya told her daughter Mindaza, who was standing beside her. It would be best if you kept your tongue under control, watched and listened, Celaya told her daughter again. I see you brought supplies. How much is it? Celaya asked. Enough for 6 days of trip, a woman in charge for supplied answered at once. Thank you for all of your effort. Now we have to go, it's time to become ourselves again, Celaya said quietly. The islanders spread out inside the boat, each sitting on one of the wooden thwarts that ran from starboard to larboard, with Celaya retaining her place in the bow and sitting at the long steering oar in the stern. There was silence, as if everybody was waiting for a signal. Celaya gave it. It's time to get prepared. The islanders each took a present out of chests that were unlocked beneath the wooden thwarts. It took them a whole 15 minutes to undergo the metamorphosis from peaceful islanders who looked after their animals and farmed barley to a boatload of warriors wearing chain mail. Mindaza regarded the individuals she had grown up with but barely knew. One man, standing in the stern, wore a chain mail shirt that was stretched over his stomach and held an iron helmet close to his head. Another man, who had made a living by chopping and storing peat, was standing close to the bow and grinning as he ran his rough hands down the length of his oar. But compared to her mother Celaya, who had a helmet adorned with 2 golden wings and a chain shirt that reached her calves, their appearance seemed insignificant. Celaya scanned the whole ship. Weapons, she said, while her team prowled among the chests or prodded the boat's bottom. When they came out, they had a variety of swords and spears that they placed next to them on the rowing seats. Mindaza could only watch as her mother raised a sword with a silver handle. Spiral hunters, are you ready for this? The whole group immediately said, we are ready. Mo. There. Mindaza could hear the shake in her voice. She didn't expect this unexceptional things that she had never imagined before. Push. Celaya's voice echoed around. When Celaya hears her daughter calling, she immediately turns to face Mindaza. She could see steel and humor mingled in Mindaza's eyes, and she was aware of the things that made her daughter quiver in the face of this new reality where power, compassion, and authority reigned supreme. When the islander heard the voice of Celaya, they eased the sideways as the rowers who were closer to the shelf pushed themselves into the water, gliding toward the light's semicircle that denoted the outer world after the rowers made one short stroke, then followed by 2 and more. At the oars. The islanders withdrew the slim, bladeless oars. The ship is now successful out of the cave and hit the swell of the Western Ocean. The huge figurehead of the ship rose, so it pointed to the sky, and then plunged down, and then it rose again. Mindaza felt her stomach slide. While the bird is balanced on top with the air, gave one harsh call and began to preen its feathers. A seagull swooped close, had a look at the eagle and decided not to investigate further. Raise the mainsail. Celaya ordered and, with no apparent effort, the crew positioned a 30-foot tall length of straight pine upright in the center of the ship. Callel gave gruff orders, and stays were fastened to keep it secure. A crossbar was hoisted and secured near the top and a great red canvas sail hoisted and dropped, swell in the breeze. Granny Wana began a chant which the others quickly picked up, and they all rowed together, with Callel who proudly held at the steering oar. Celaya standing in the bow, looking forward to the great island of Mindanao. Mindaza swallowed hard and watched them all rise slowly. She looked behind her as her home island diminished in the distance. Do you have to say something, Mindaza? Khalil asked softly. I just miss my father. I am so sad that he is not going with us like mothers told me. Wherever I am, this is still my home, my loving island. One day you will come back here, but for now you have to face your destiny. When that day comes, I hope you come home on that island with me, Kahald said with a gentle smile on his face. Are you serious? Mindaza asked. But Khalil never gave an answer. He just showed his smile with a positive thoughts, HMMP. Just say goodbye for now. Your future is coming. Khalil said and left her. Mindaza was not sure how she felt. There was sadness there, and uncertainty at the suddenness of it all, but mingled with the doubt was a surge of excitement and wonder at all the new things she knew she would see. After a 5-hour journey on the ocean, the sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds. A strong wind hit them accompanied by huge waves in the middle of the sea. Mindaza looked at the crew. She had known these people all her life. Now, they sat hauling on the long oars as the ship rose and fell, dashing aside the waves from its sharp prow. The youngest was middle-aged, the oldest in her dotage, yet here they were, pulling lustily at the oars. Jeg. Rushing of the wind. Mother, they are all wet now because of the rain, how can I help? Concerned Mindaza asked her mother, but Salaya said, don't worry, they will be fine. Soon the rain will stop. Granny Wana made another chant. Verse after verse she said, open the light and guide everyone for a journey. After she praised those opening words, the crew joining in as they leaned forward and hauled back. A shaft of sunlight probed from the east, reflecting from the waves in a myriad of diamonds of light and highlighting the faces of them all. Suddenly, they did not look like farmers and peat cutters. The sun cast shadows from high cheekbones and strong jaws so, for the first time, Mindaza saw the hidden strength of these people. She saw the deep eyes and set mouths and wondered how these men and women would have looked 20 or 30 years or so back, when they were in their prime. Over there. Salaya informed her daughter Mindaza. That's where we are heading, Mindaza. She leaned closer to her daughter. There, you will find your destiny. A series of small islets surrounded by waves that broke into a curtain of spray and spindrift before the steady westerly wind blew the boat, until the waves collected power for the next onslaught, and it follows until it stops. The islanders dipped their prow to huge waves so that scores of gallons of seawater surged on board, ran the full length of the vessel, soaked every one of the crew, and gushed out through the scuppers. Mindaza stretched her neck backwards as far as she could to view the cliffs. Mother, why are we here? We are here so you can find your destiny, Mindaza. Mindaza heard Khalil rough laugh stop abruptly. Why are you laughing? No, I didn't. Khalil immediate response. I saw you laughed. Never mind it. I am just curious about you. Khalil said. Mindaza sighed. Go. Find your destiny, Salaya repeated. But how do I do that? Mindaza asked. It's your task to find it, Salaya told her. Just be careful out there. Be careful of someone you can trust. You have to learn more about life. I know you are that smart, sweetie. A sea swell raised the ship, causing it to surge up and closer to the rocks. The voice came from above, faint, feminine, and familiar. Just the words escaped Mindaza, despite her efforts to listen. What was that? Mindaza asked. Salaya held her gaze but said nothing. Mother, did you hear that? Mindaza tried again. And nobody else from the people spoke. They avoided Mindaza's eyes as the voice came again, ethereal, drifting around her mind without the luxury of words. Okay. I am going onto the island, Mindaza decided. Steer us closer. Khalil, Salaya ordered quietly. Mindaza noticed a little ledge a few feet above sea level mounting the rock in a sharp diagonal as the ship got closer to the island. She followed it with her gaze until it vanished, then mapped a path to the dizzying heights above. Stop, Mindaza said, wobbling on her bare feet as the all people bounced and rolled to the beat of the waves. She cast a peek behind her, but the stranger who had been her mother said nothing. On that location of splintering waves and roaring wind, the voice she heard again, tantalizing, spooky. Mindaza landed softly in the shore after a short leap from the ship to the island. She glanced up and balanced comfortably. What appeared to be a clear ledge from the ship was really a little crack with hardly enough room for her toes. Mindaza looked over her shoulder, but all the people had backed away. She was in 20 yards offshore now, with Khalil holding the steering oar and all other eyes fixed on her. The words came into her head, as clear as if somebody stood at her shoulder on that precarious ledge, as reminding herself she said, "I can do this, I have to find my own path, trust me mother." Mindaza's remarks were caught in the wind and carried away to the scudding clouds. Overhead, she began to climb, searching for finger and toe holds with the unconscious skill she had honed on 100 expeditions hunting birds' eggs on the cliffs. Twice she looked back over her shoulder, to see the ship further away. The wind was whipping spindrift from the surface of the lunging sea. There was nowhere to go, except going up. As she climbed, the cliff seemed to rise before her, so the distance to the top never diminished, only the clouds seemed closer. The voice had gone, and now the only sounds were the howl of the wind and the crash and thunder of the waves against the rock. The ledge stopped. One step there was a finger-wide ridge on which to balance, and then there was nothing except wind-smooth granite stretching upward as far as she could see. What do I do now? She asked for nobody, but there were strange voices that came again saying, "Follow your destiny." Mindaza heard the tartness in her voice. She peered up again, blinked as water dropped from an overhang, and noticed a black smear 15 feet above her head on the face of the cliff. That's a cave, but how can I go up there? She wondered. The cliff above was sheer rock save for a sliver of thorn-laden trailing bramble that the wind twisted this way and that. Mindaza think for a while now. She inhaled deeply. Later on she said, "There is no other option.